Council Committee on Administration and Finance, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, met in the Council Chamber on Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the matters of two resolutions. Number 291, authorizing the mayor to execute tax increment exemption agreements between the City of Salem and the residences on Canal Street, LLP. And also number 292, authorizing the mayor to execute tax increment exemption agreements between the City of Salem and Juniper Point, LLC. Notice of this meeting was posted on June 18th, 2024 at 3:40 p.m. So joining us tonight in attendance from the Administration Finance Committee is Councillor Stott, Councillor Gerslow, and Councillor Varela. The only councillor absent is Councillor Prosnewski. And joining us from the Committee of the Whole is Councillors Cohen and Councillor Hackworth. Also with us tonight is Elena Eimert, our senior planner, Chris Copeland from the 266 Canal Street project team, Bobby Matthews from the 16 Franklin Street project team, and joining us on Zoom is Matt Kohler, the city's peer reviewer. Also in chambers tonight, we have Amanda Giancola, our deputy director. So as was said, we have in front of us two resolutions authorizing the mayor to execute the tax increment agreements with the residents, which is part of the name of the development, the residents on Canal Street, and authorizing the mayor to execute the tie agreement between the city and Juniper Point Bayview Station LLC on Franklin Street. We'll be taking up the Canal Street project first in its entirety, and then moving on to the Franklin Street project. For clarity, I'd like to offer that the tax increment exemptions are not for the base assessed value of the property. That we continue to collect. They are for the difference between the projected assessed value and the base value. And both proposals include market rate housing and affordable housing units. We will first hear from Matt Solar, our peer reviewer, and Elena Eimert, our senior planner, making a presentation and giving us all the details. Then we'll have questions from the council with the project representatives available for questions. And later, I will take public comment as well in person and online. So great. And Ms. Eimert, thank you for being here tonight and showing us all the details here.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. Matt, I will kick off the presentations and then I will cue you in for your portion. So just hang tight. So that appears to be visible in the Zoom. Again, thank you so much for convening this evening. We're before you to discuss a tax increment exemption for the project permitted for 266 Canal Street. As the committee chair has referenced, there are multiple individuals here present for these projects. That includes Matt Zoller, the city's peer reviewer for the tie agreements before you this evening, as well as representatives of the project team who will be available for questions at the end of this presentation. So for many of you counselors, you'll be familiar with the HDIP tool. I have chosen to refresh some of a presentation that was given to the Council of the Whole in May of 2024. This slide here just places the HDIP tool in the larger housing context of the work that the City of Salem is doing. HDIP was identified as a municipal subsidy strategy that the city should pursue in its most recent housing roadmap document, which is our guiding policy document for the city's housing work. HDIP is within that municipal subsidy bucket because it does involve the city's contribution to support housing projects via a tax increment exemption, foregoing some of the taxes on the improved elements of a redevelopment. But what is critical about it, and was really so efficacious about the tool, is it also unlocks and allows us to leverage state housing tax credits in support of these projects. So it is both a local contribution that allows us to utilize a state contribution as well in supporting our housing goals. This graphic may be familiar to some. This outlines for us when we talk about a tie, what are we talking about? As the council chair introduced, the city will never collect less than the base taxes on a property. We are always looking at an exemption applied to the improved value. So that, if you can see my cursor, is item 4 on this graphic here. For the HDIP program, the minimum tax increment exemption that a municipality can approve is 10% for 5 years. The maximum is 100% for 20 years. And again, after the tie concludes, after that agreed upon period of time, the city collects all of the taxes on the subject property. So the benefits of HDIP, it is a tool intended to support market rate development in gateway cities. It is meant to support projects that would otherwise not be financially feasible due to some challenging aspects of the development. That can include remediating environmental concerns, that can include responding to constraints posed by environmental elements of a project site or adaptive reuse. It can also support deeper or greater affordability of a project. So these are the minimum requirements for HDIP. The projects before you this evening meet all of these criteria. And additionally, as was shared at that May primer, a new element this year is the peer review of tie requests. And that is why we have Matt Zoller with us tonight of MPC Development. And he assists us in verifying the financial need for this support from the city. So this slide contextualizes where we are in the larger HDIP process for these projects. So we are here at the Committee on Administration and Finance in advance of City Council taking action on this item. And then the projects, if they receive a positive referral out of committee and receive a positive vote in council, would then be filed with EOHLC in this upcoming round, which opens on July 11th. So now to discuss the project specifics for the 266 Canal project. So this is a rental project with 250 units, 50 of which would be affordable to households making 60% of the area median income here in Salem. That is double what would be required under the city's current inclusionary housing ordinance. From the application of that ordinance, we would get only 25 units, and the developer here has agreed to provide 50 units at 60% area median income. Per the requirements, this project has its local approvals in hand, and what we have come to an agreement on and brought to this body and for council's consideration is a tax agreement, is a tax increment exemption for 20% of the improved value over a 10-year period. So on the back side of this graphic, and I'll read out some of these figures because I know they're quite small, the planning department works with the city assessor's office to determine the current assessed value of a property, and then describing the proposed redevelopment, the city assessor generates for us what they believe to be the future improved value of the property. We use that to calculate the increment, which is then how we get this graphic to put before you all this evening. As proposed, the city will never collect less than the base taxes on the current property. That number for the parcels included in the 266 Canal redevelopment is $79,369.89. Over the period of the tie, the city would collect about $600,000 annually, and it would forego $152,000. That would be that 20%, and that would continue for the duration of the tie, proposed to be 10 years. The peer reviewer did find that exemption made it possible for this project to clear its return on cost metric, which makes this project attractive to developers and would allow it to move forward. Again, after the tie concludes, the city would collect the full tax obligation on the improved property. So that is this column on the far right. And that previous graphic sort of shows a snapshot in time year to year. This shows the full 10-year duration of the tie. So if we come to this exempted property taxes column here, for about $1.5 million, you could say that the city is enabling 50 units of affordable housing at 60% area median income, which is very much in line with the median income here in Salem. And Matt, I will turn it over to you to speak to your analysis.
Thank you, Elena. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So
Matt, I don't think we can hear you.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
I don't see him muted here, so.
It shows that I'm.
Oh, hold on, Matt. Okay, Matt, could you try us again?
Sure. How's that? Can you hear me now?
Thank you. Yes, welcome.
Great. Glad that's working. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Elena. That was an excellent preview of the information that we have before us today. So there's a lot of text on this slide. I'm going to try and summarize it. Essentially, we met with the developer and we got background information on the project to understand the current financial position of the project and its ability to move forward in these tumultuous times. The economic climate for development is quite challenging right now. Being a developer myself and doing this kind of work, I typically do more affordable housing, traditional affordable housing, big A, small A. But this project was kind of stuck, and so the request came before the city for the tie and ultimately the HDIP credit, which comes in the form of equity to the project after selling those credits. And I believe the council's been primed on that previously, so I'm not going to go into detail there. But what this increment essentially does, or the removal of the increment from the budget, allows the project to meet its financial returns as described here. And in my memo, I describe return on cost and internal rate of return, as those are what investors need for a rental project of this scale and size. Construction costs, are also a challenge right now. And the cost of capital, that being primarily debt, has doubled in the past several months. So that's a challenge for the developer. And then, looking to reduce costs, I reviewed their budget in detail, and on a per unit cost, this is in line with other market projects. So there's not a whole lot to trim there. And then looking at their operating expenses, they are also in line with the market. So, I think I recommend that the council takes action here and approves the tie as requested, as this will ultimately increase revenues to the city substantially if the project moves forward. You saw that from the data that Elena provided, $80,000 in taxes versus what's to come as a result of this investment is a significant difference. And then, essentially buying the city's affordability in perpetuity. 60% of AMI rents are typically for tax credit projects, those that use other affordable subsidies, mainly the low-income housing tax credit, are at or below 60% of the area median income. So 50 units of a 250-unit project at those deep affordability levels is certainly well worth the investment by the city. And I don't need to speak to it, but I'm sure you're all aware of the housing crisis we have in the Commonwealth. So 250 units is quite substantial. And then that also will lead to additional leakage of the new residents living at the development, which will ultimately go back to the city in some way, shape, or form. So I think there's a lot of benefit to moving this project forward. It's clear from the analysis that, without the tie, it's not financially feasible. So I will stop there and let Elena finish and take any questions as they come. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That does conclude our presentation. Again, city staff, Matt Zoller, the city's peer reviewer, and the project representatives are happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the work that you put into the presentation. It was very thorough and informative. And I also do want to echo that I appreciate the large amount of affordability in this project. 50 units is impressive at 60% AMI. Councillor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Not being a member of the committee, I want to speak on behalf of this tie. I believe that residents on Canal Street, 266 Canal Street, is the most transformative private development in the history of Salem, or at least in the history since I've been here. This project started in 2019, and since then the costs have gone up 47%. In addition, partially because the Canal Street stormwater project hasn't been finished, the developer is doing millions of dollars of installing tanks under the parking along Canal Street. Regarding resiliency, the developer is restoring wetlands and will actually have viewing areas so people can see over the wetlands, which is really tremendous. Regarding sustainability, reducing carbon, it's all electric, 10% EV charging, which is not mandated, and more bike parking than units, which is an example for every development. Regarding housing, our city is really suffering from a diminishing rental stock. This is 250 units, and as Elena said, it's twice the affordability mandated by the inclusionary housing. There's public access to the open spaces, improvements along the multi-use path, and what we really need, especially in the hope that we might someday have a train stop close proximity to this, is workforce and transit housing. So I'm hoping that my colleagues on the committee will support this unanimously, because it's a win-win-win-win-win-win. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cohen. Are there any more questions or comments? Is Councillor Gerslow?
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question. On the medium income, you said it was for this area. What are you talking about for medium income? I know market value is usually based on Boston area. So what are you talking about in median?
Sure, I can tease that apart. What I meant to say, and what I hope that I said, was that these units will be affordable at 60% area median income, and that is resonant with the median income here in Salem. Per the 2019 ACS survey, which is the American Community Survey, the median income for Salem was around $68,000. And as of 2024, the 60% area median income for the Boston-Cambridge metropolitan statistical area, which is what you're referencing, that we're part of that larger area, the 60% income limit was $68,000 and some numbers. So those are very similar. Did that answer your question?
Yes, and
I can get you the exact number.
Yep.
So the 60% area median income for a one-person household in the Boston-Cambridge metropolitan statistical area, which does include Salem, is $68,520. And in the housing roadmap, it was found using the 2019 American Community Survey that the median income in Salem was $68,808. So those numbers are quite consistent. And the hope there would be that these units would be available to your median household within the city of Salem.
Okay, and how much are they talking about rental? The other 200?
I would defer that question to the project team. I believe market rents.
Hi, Chris Copeland for the applicant. We haven't determined all of our market rate units yet. I understand the question, and I think they are running, if you look at it on a square foot basis, they go anywhere from $2.80 up to $3 a square foot. So if you take a 700 foot, one bed, it might go for as much as 2,100 or 2,200 in that range. But the market really determines that. And we look at comps, we'll look at Traders Row, we'll look down here at the station and over on Halsted and see what the market can bear. But that's usually run out by the time we're finished. That's when we set those rents. But right now it's an untrended number, and I think it's around high $2, maybe $3 a square foot in that range for market rate units. I'd also add one more thing to what Elena was saying. I believe we're allowed to do a 70% local preference for the affordable units, and we're going to try to do that as well and put that in the regulatory agreement so that there's a higher number of local residents that would have access through the lottery to these 50%, these 60% units.
You talking just Salem residents
Yes.
now, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I think we're allowed to do that, and we want to do that.
You need to get approval from HLC for that, but yes.
I think we're allowed to do it. I'm not sure off the top of my head that if there's some reason we can't, but that's what we want to do. So I just don't know. Yeah,
It's
we
not-
have to work through the attorneys and the planning department, and everyone has to approve that. That's what we're going to apply for. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful to know. Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I am in support of this TIF. I think this is a great tool for us to help get additional housing stock, especially affordable housing stock available to us. I'm just not super familiar with the project, and I'm curious about the timeline because this TIF or this tie goes into effect after the final certificate of occupancy, and this is quite a large project. So I didn't know if you'd be able to give a high-level overview of the timeline of the project. And also, I see that there was a request. So kind of two questions. Timeline of the project, and I see that there was a request for the change of building affordable versus market rate units, and I'm wondering the background to that.
I will let Chris Copeland, project representative, speak to the first question, and then Councillor Stott, I may have a clarification for you on the second.
So on the timeline, we have foundation permits right now, and we're working off of our first phase of equity that allowed us to purchase the land and get underway so we could at least be in front of the July change of building code, which is a substantial change in energy code and windows and all kinds of things that would have cost the project millions more. So we did have to use that first part of our equity to do that, but what we don't have is a guarantee that all that equity is there for the duration of the project, which plays into why we're here for this request. We're trying to apply for the HDIP and get our building permits as soon as we can to keep momentum going. So we're trying to coalesce all this now to keep this project moving, but it's not guaranteed, if I may. But we're underway with the foundations on building one. We hope that we will be completed demolition. 2026 will be done with the first buildings, and then 2027 will be done with the rest of the project. So the hope is that we're done with everything in the next 3 years. Should be under 3 years, actually. Thanks.
Thank you. And the second part of the question, thank you, Ms. Simon.
Councillor Stott, could you clarify your question?
I was just looking at the requested amendment that you had at the end of your presentation, and one of them was, so I know that you can't just like build, 200 market rate units first and occupy those, and then the 50 affordable go in building 4 in the back. So I was just asking for a clarification on how that was going to work. And I saw there was a change also in what was originally agreed to.
So the one, and that is in the tie agreement, that is in section Section 3, Section 4, item B, that's the MRRU percentage. Per the planning board decision for this project, they agreed to, I believe, a ratio of a certificate of occupancy for 1 affordable unit per every 10 market rate units. And through conversation, the developer here agreed to a rate of 1 certificate of occupancy for an affordable unit per 5 market rate units. I'll let Chris Copeland add.
Thank you. The math is that as we finish any market rate unit, we're going to put 20% of the affordables online. So if we finish 100 units, 20% of the affordables will be online, dispersed by floor, dispersed throughout the building, and at the same ratio prorated against the 1s and 2s and studios as they're built. So.
Thank you. Councilor Stott, you have any further? Okay. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Merkel, not being a member of the committee. I do want to mention a couple of things about the project. When I got elected, but before I was sworn in, Councilor Turiel and I did a online community meeting. And there was a lot of issues expressed from people who live in Bettini Lane, Kimball Lane, Adams Street. There's not really a lot of other residential. And then we had, after I was elected, we had an in-person community meeting at the Community Life Center. I think we had about 100 people show up. And it was great because it wasn't just addressing the adjacent resident issues, but ADA, concerns came up. And I do believe that very unique on a project like this is the way that some of the residents who were concerned about the project have come along. And I'll just give a couple of examples. So there was a concern by people in Adams, if you know where that is, that's very high up on a hill, and it kind of overlooks the project. And the developer agreed to move the project further away from those buildings so that they wouldn't hear the HVAC equipment and other things like that. And there's, this isn't in the documentation, but developers working with the gas station next door, Universal, to make sure that the road that they've committed to replacing, anyone who's been behind there knows it's a real dangerous place to drive. And a lot of commercial trucks, a lot of people use it as a path through from Jefferson and Loring. And so there's been a lot of work with the businesses and the residents. And, my belief is that they've really ameliorated all the concerns by both of them.
Thank you. I remember attending a community meeting as well. Yes, and it was well attended. Thank you. And there was also a lot of, environmental thought that went into this project as well. Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Councilor Jerslow.
I don't know who to address this to. Have you thought in this project of doing ownership of these units, like condos, so people can get like a start instead of just all rental units?
We haven't at this time. We're committed to a rental project at the moment. And it would be challenging if we parsed out some of the units within a building as condos. That does have legal challenges to it. It is possible, but right now it's a rental project. That's what the economics and the business plan is based on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to follow up on that?
Add one piece. We do know that renters in Salem make significantly less than our homeowner population. And so having a greater number of affordable units at that 60% AMI is a helpful addition to the city of Salem housing stock.
Yes, I would also agree with that. The last numbers I heard were 50% renters, and some of our dense neighborhoods are 80% renters, and a lot of them have gone to condominiums, and so that has, our rental stock has depleted. So I appreciate that as well. Any other questions? Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Just to be brief, I am in support of this TIF here. I think this is exactly why we have this. The developer has shown that they're willing to give a little more affordability than that's what's required. And I think that's valiant. And I think that's exactly why we have tools like this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the council? Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Before I make a motion, I just had a logistical question. If we needed to, this might be for Elena, if we needed to actually amend the tie agreement here in committee?
My understanding is no, that those administrative changes can be made after the fact.
Okay.
If there's no more question, I had said that I would take public comment. So is there anybody in chambers here for public comment? No. So just give me a moment to check online here. Does anyone joining us on Zoom want to give a raised hand if they wanted to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one making public comment, Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to make a motion to recommend adoption of the resolution for the Residents on Canal Street LLP regarding the tax incremental, tax incremental exemption agreement.
Second.
So Councilor Stott moves to adopt the to recommend back to the full council with a positive recommendation. Yes, for the resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a tax increment exemption agreement between the city of Salem and the Residences on Canal Street LLP, seconded by Councilor Varela. All in favor? Okay, so none opposed. I see 4 hands in favor and none opposed. 3 hands plus my own. So the matter carries 4-0. And I would like to thank Chris Copeland for joining us tonight. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to work with Councilor Cohen and the city and everybody to support this project. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, I appreciate it. Like I had said, I had attended the public meeting, and Councilor Cohen has been really good about getting the information out to the public as well. So it's appreciated. Thank you. We'll just take one moment to get ready for taking up the next resolution. Okay, we are now moving on to the resolution between the City of Salem and the Juniper Point proposal. And again, we have Ms. Imert, our senior planner, who will present with Matt Zoller, our city peer reviewer, who is still with us online. And thank you very much. Also, for the record, Councillor Cohen has left the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all. This is the presentation for the tax increment exemption proposed for 1618 and 20R Franklin. Again, with us this evening, we have myself for city staff, Amanda Ciancola, the Deputy Director of DPCD, Matt Zoller, the city's peer reviewer, who has conducted reviews of project documents to verify the TIE ask. And then we also have Bobby Matthews with us tonight here on behalf of Bayview Station LLC, which is the entity applying for this tax increment exemption. So unless there is significant appetite, I will move fairly quickly through these slides, which are familiar to all of you, having just reviewed them for 266 Canal. But in brief, HDIP is a tool via a local contribution, a local show of support of a project via a tax increment exemption that allows a project to apply for state tax credits to support market rate housing development in gateway cities, of which Salem is one. Again, when we look at the TIE, this is an exemption on a portion of the taxes attached to the improved value of a project. The city will never collect less than the base taxes it currently collects. HDIP allows projects to respond to challenging development constraints, including things like environmental concerns and contamination remediation, which is the case for the 1618 20R Franklin project. So to the project specifics, the TIE ask before you all tonight is attached to phase 2 of this larger redevelopment project. Phase 2 consists of 13 condominium units of the larger 37 unit development. Of the 13 units in phase 2, 11 would be market rate, and 2 units would be home ownership opportunities. One 2-bedroom at 60% area median, one bedroom at 60% area median income, and one 3-bedroom at 80% area median income. Per this project's planning board approval, they are required to provide 2 of those units at 80%. But if the TIE is approved, the developer has agreed that they can bring down that affordability level for that 2-bedroom unit to 60% area median income. Again, creating a deeper affordable homeownership opportunity. This project takes what is what has been a contaminated junkyard site and redevelops it as homeownership opportunities. This project has its local approvals, and they are seeking a tax increment exemption for 10% over 5 years. That is the minimum contribution that makes this project eligible for the Housing Development Incentive Program, the HDIP credits. So as described previously, we work at the assessor's office to determine the current assessed value and then evaluating the proposed redevelopment program, the future improved value to identify what the increment would be. And then we sketch out what the taxes will look like and what the, if approved, increment would result in. For Franklin Street, it's currently assessed at a little over $1.5 million. With the proposed program, that improved value is roughly $11 million, so our increment is around $9.7 million. When we look at applying the tax rate, we come to an increment of $11,292 per year. So that would be that exemption over 5 years. If the project is redeveloped over those 5 years, the city will see and will collect over $100,000 in new tax revenue. The current taxes on the existing land is a little over $18,000. Again, if this project moves forward, the city would stand to bring in over $100,000 annually, foregoing roughly $11,000 for a 5-year period. And after that 5-year period has elapsed, the city will collect both the base taxes and the total taxes on the improved value. The peer reviewer found in this case that $11,000 exempted each year, and particularly the HDIP credits that it makes this project eligible to apply for, were critical for this project closing its financing gap. Again, this chart just breaks down for us year over year what that 5-year period would look like. In total, this would be a $56,000 exemption, and the city would stand to gain over $731,000 in future tax revenue on the improved value of the property. And Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Can you hear me?
You could be a little louder.
Okay, I can speak into my microphone, but it might be locally that you might have to turn me up.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Elena. So again, we reviewed the project with the development team and took some data and pricing information from the developer. This is different than the project you previously reviewed, as it's a condominium project. I should also make note of the cost to build a project like this is much greater on a per unit basis due to the smaller size of the project. There are typically fixed costs that don't change when you do a project like this, such as infrastructure costs, foundations, et cetera. So it's challenging, especially in this economic environment. As I described previously, cost of capital has increased. It's harder to get a loan. And so, making changes to the design again, and the operations of this wouldn't be feasible. And so it's delivering home ownership units in this case to the community. And that's a benefit. I think you're by approving the tie, you're ultimately unlocking the HDIP credit, which can be an equity source for the development team to help offset the capital costs and close their gap, as Elena described. And in this case, the tie will actually go to those homeowners that purchase these units, as they will pay their own taxes. So you're directly impacting those units in a positive way, and the buyers, making these units potentially more attractive for these buyers. And then, as Elena described, increasing the affordability as a result of the tie is a benefit to the city. By reducing the AMI of one of those units to be in line with 60% of AMI in that purchase price, as dictated by HUD and the state. Those prices are set, and I don't have them offhand. Maybe Elena does, but they are set annually based on income. And so the city is realizing net new revenues, creating more housing, creating more affordable housing, and ultimately, offering what is an opportunity to redevelop a blighted site with an improvement. So I'll stop there and again take any questions that come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. The only additional slide here for this council's consideration, and this does have an impact on the resolution that is before you. When the applicant submitted their letter to the mayor, that was attached to a different LLC, Juniper Point Development LLC, which is, I believe, the larger development entity, and a specific LLC was created for this project. So it would just be changing within the text of the resolution, Juniper Point LLC to Bayview Station LLC. So that would be a recommended amendment, or that would be an amendment that staff would recommend to the body this evening as part of your referral out of committee. And we open the floor for any questions you may have.
Thank you. So when we have, what we're approving or not, we want to add the Bayview Station when we refer to, so I just want to make sure that is done correctly. Station. Okay, so you refer to it as Juniper Point Bayview Station. Yep. Is that correct? Yep.
I would just say Bayview Station LLC.
Okay, Bayview Station LLC. Okay, no, thank you for that clarity. And also, yes, this was the minimum amount of a tie that can be offered. So as well. Okay, thank you. And I also had appreciated Councillor Stott's question on the last proposal. So I was actually going to ask the same one to the developer, just what the timeline looks like and how the affordable units are worked into that timeline. I thought that was a helpful question. Thank you. And Mr. Matthews, thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, councilors. My name is Bobby Matthews, and I'm here, on behalf of Bayview Station. So phase one is already underway. The ground was broken in, just a few months ago in the spring of 2024. Right now, we are putting together the sort of capital stack associated with phase two. We are hoping to get this tie in place in order for us to move forward at the state level to figure out what that, what tax credit may be available to sort of close the gap associated with this financing this project right now. So construction, I would say, in a perfect world, it could be as soon as 6 months. More likely, it's probably going to be. It could be anywhere from really 3 to 9 months or 12 months actually before the phase two is broken ground. So I believe the tie is here before you today because there are deadlines associated with the tax credit application process. So I believe we will move forward with negotiations with the state immediately following this your recommendation, if a tie is approved here, that will avail us the opportunity to figure that tax credit out with the state, and then that should more finalize the timing associated with it. Certainly it'll be, at a minimum, it'll be within the next 12 to 13 months, but it could be sooner than that. I'm talking about construction, and then you would talk about I think it would be about 12 months for the construction process. So you're talking, these things would be, if you want to push it out to 25, they could be done this time in 26, or maybe even a little sooner than that. And the two units that we're talking about on the affordable side, I believe one is a 2-bedroom and one is a 3-bedroom. And the 2-bedroom unit, at 60% AMI, I believe that's, and I would defer to the planning staff here, but I believe that number is about $200,000 for $200,000 for that 2-bedroom unit would be the affordable at 60% AMI. So that somebody, some Salem family or resident will have the opportunity to own a 2-bedroom condominium for $200,000.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry, didn't see whose hand went up, but Councilor Varela?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. We'll be brief. This seems like for 5 years, 10% exemption. it's a pretty modest request. And I do appreciate that it helps with a little more deeper affordability with that 2-bedroom unit. So for that reason, I'll be voting in favor of this tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. One comment and two questions, if I may. So I guess the comment of just pointing out that in our first tie that we approved, the incentive goes back to the developer, and this one it will go to the homeowner, the purchaser of the condo. So I think that's a clear difference, and I think a good one. Regarding the affordability units, so there are 4 buildings on this development. I'm assuming there's going to be one affordable unit in each building. That's how it's spaced out. And then I just wanted confirmation, or I'm looking for confirmation that phase 2 is buildings C and D. So the one along Franklin Street, the townhouses, and then the closer building to the street. So one of those affordable units will be one of the townhouse units.
Really, yes, correct.
Okay, so just for my clarity for understanding, originally this was approved for 4 units at 80% AMI, and the new approval is still 4 units, 3 at 80% and 1 at 60. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the councilors? No? Okay, I'm just going to, and I don't see anybody in attendance for public comment. I just want to take 1 second to look online, but Councilor Varela. Yeah, okay, hold on one moment. Let me just see if the attendee would like to give public comment, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Okay, Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. So first start with the amendment to the resolution. I'd like to amend that we strike Juniper Point LLC and add Bayview Station LLC regarding the resolution and the TIF. And my second motion would be to, yeah, you want to do it first?
Do we have a second? Seconded by Councilor Stott. Sorry. Amendment. Varela. Okay, so Councilor Varela motions to amend the resolution for the tax increment exemption agreement between the City of Salem from Juniper Point to Bayview Station, seconded by Councilor Stott. All in favor? Let the record show. I see 3 hands plus my own. So the motion carries 4-0. Okay, Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to make a motion for adoption of the tie agreement between the City of Salem and Bayview Station LLC for a 5-year exemption of 10%.
Second. Councilor Jerslow. Okay, so Councilor Varela motions to recommend adoption of authorizing the mayor to execute a tax increment exemption agreement between the City of Salem and Bayview Station LLC, seconded by Councilor Jerslow. All in favor? Okay, let the records show that I see 3 hands plus my own. The motion carries 4-0. Great. And again, I want to thank everyone that put a lot of work into this proposal and gave us a lot of information, and for our attendees for being here. Say, Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Councilor Merkel. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor? Okay, this 4-1. We are adjourned. 4-0. We are adjourned.